I'm Emma, 32 years old, and until recently a senior account manager at Walker & Associates. After 6 years of dedication, I discovered disturbing discrepancies in our client billing. My manager Harold constantly belittled me, especially when I raised concerns. The final straw, overhearing him say, "She's not cut out for leadership," while taking credit for my work. Before I share how my resignation exposed a massive fraud scheme, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to follow my journey of standing up against corporate corruption. Looking back, I can pinpoint exactly when my dream job started to unravel. But first, let me tell you how I got there. After graduating with my marketing degree from Northwestern, I spent 4 years at a smaller agency learning the ropes. I was good at what I did, building relationships, understanding client needs, and delivering results. When the opportunity came to join Walker & Associates, one of the most prestigious marketing firms in Chicago, I jumped at it. The glass tower on Michigan Avenue, the impressive client roster, the reputation, it all seemed perfect. "We're thrilled to have you on board," Emma. Richard Walker himself said during my orientation. "Your portfolio shows exactly the kind of innovative thinking we value here." Those words meant everything to me. I was 26 then, ambitious and ready to prove myself. The salary was double what I'd been making, and the bonus structure seemed incredibly generous. Up to 30% of your base, depending on client billing and retention. It was a place where hard work would finally pay off. My direct supervisor was Harold Jenkins, Vice President of Accounts. 53 tall, with prematurely silver hair that he seemed proud of, Harold had the corner office and 20 years at the company. During our first meeting, he leaned back in his leather chair and smiled. "The accounts team is the backbone of this company, Emma. We manage relationships worth millions. I'm particular about who joins my team, so consider yourself fortunate." I nodded eagerly, not yet recognizing the condescension that laced his words. I was just happy to be there. The first 6 months were exhilarating. I was assigned 8 mid-sized clients, mostly in the tech and healthcare sectors. My primary contact in the executive suite was Jessica Winters, our chief financial officer. A sharp woman in her mid-40s with an intimidating intelligence. She rarely smiled, but always acknowledged good work, with a slight nod, a gesture I came to value. "Your quarterly retention numbers look solid," she told me after my first performance review. "Keep it up." My closest ally became Alicia Ramirez, another account manager who had joined just a year before me. She helped me navigate the office politics and unwritten rules. "Harold likes to take credit for wins and distribute blame for losses," she warned me over lunch one day. "Document everything." I laughed it off then. Surely a company this prestigious wouldn't tolerate such behavior. There was also Brian Peterson, a junior account manager who seemed permanently attached to Harold's side. Freshly graduated from an Ivy League school with family connections to our board, Brian received opportunities that others with his experience wouldn't normally get. "Harold's grooming him for leadership," Alicia explained with a roll of her eyes. "Merit has nothing to do with it." Despite these undercurrents, my early days were filled with success. I revitalized our relationship with TechStart Solutions, a client who had been considering leaving. My strategy increased their annual spend by 23%. I landed Horizon Healthcare, a regional provider looking to expand. Within my first year, my client portfolio was generating over $4 million in annual billing. The bonus structure at Walker was complex but motivating. Account managers received percentages based on client retention and growth. The executives, particularly the VPs like Harold, received much larger bonuses based on the overall performance of their divisions. It was normal for VPs to receive bonuses in the high 6 figures, while account managers might get 40 to 60,000. The warning signs were subtle at first. During a team presentation about the TechStart success, Harold interrupted me mid-sentence. "What Emma means is that the strategy I developed and she implemented has shown promising results." I was stunned into silence. The strategy had been entirely mine. Later, when I checked the report submitted to the executive team, Harold's name was listed as the lead with mine as support staff. Alicia noticed my expression when I discovered this. "Welcome to Walker," she said quietly. "It's not personal. It's just how Harold operates." I tried to brush it off. This was still my dream job, and surely as I proved myself, these issues would fade. The company culture otherwise seemed positive. Team-building retreats, wellness initiatives, and genuine camaraderie among peers. "You're making a name for yourself," Alicia told me after I'd been there about a year. "People notice your work, even when Harold takes credit." I clung to this hope, throwing myself even more passionately into my work. My client relationships deepened, and my portfolio continued to grow. By the end of my second year, I was managing accounts worth over $6 million in annual billing, more than any other account manager at my level. The company seemed to be thriving too. Our quarterly meetings were filled with charts showing upward trajectories. Harold would stand proudly beside these presentations, nodding as Richard praised the accounts division's performance. "This is the kind of excellence that makes Walker and Associates an industry leader," Richard would say, while Harold basked in the acclaim. I still believed that hard work and results would eventually speak for themselves. When the annual bonus announcements came, I received $54,000, larger than the average, but still modest, compared to what I knew my accounts were generating. "Be patient, Alicia," advised when I confided my disappointment. "Your time will come." I believed her. I had to. I'd worked too hard to let office politics derail my career path. Besides, I genuinely loved working with my clients, helping them solve problems and grow their businesses. The relationships I was building felt meaningful and valuable. But as my third year at Walker began, the small frustrations began multiplying, and something else appeared, something that would eventually shatter my carefully constructed professional world and force me to make the most difficult decision of my career. The Meridian project was supposed to be my breakthrough. Meridian Technologies, a rising star in cloud security, needed a complete rebrand and marketing overhaul for their flagship product. I spent weekends and late nights developing a comprehensive strategy that addressed their unique position in the market. "This is exceptional work," Emma said, Daniel Ross, Meridian's marketing director, during my presentation. "You've captured exactly what we've been trying to articulate." They approved the full proposal, a 7-figure contract that would be the largest single project I'd brought in. I was ecstatic. This was the kind of win that could fast-track my career at Walker. The celebration was short-lived. Harold called me into his office the next morning. "Good news about Meridian," he said, not looking up from his computer. "I'll be taking point on this account moving forward." "What?" "But I developed the entire strategy. I have the relationship with their team," I protested. Harold finally looked at me, his expression cool. "This is too significant for someone at your level, Emma. You'll still be involved, but I'll be the primary contact." I left his office in a daze. That afternoon, the company-wide announcement went out. Harold Jenkins secures major contract with Meridian Technologies. My name appeared in the third paragraph as part of the supporting team. Alicia found me staring at the email in the break room. "That absolute vulture," she muttered. "This is worse than his usual tricks." "I don't understand how he gets away with it," I said, fighting back tears of frustration. "Because the numbers look good, and that's all the executives care about," she replied. "As long as clients are happy and billing is up, nobody questions the details." This was when I noticed the first real discrepancy. While reviewing monthly statements for Horizon Healthcare, one of my oldest clients, I found charges for strategic consulting services that hadn't been part of our agreement. The amount wasn't huge, $8,000 for the month, but it was definitely not something we had discussed. I brought it to Harold's attention, thinking it was a simple accounting error. "It's a standard service fee," he said dismissively. "All our healthcare clients pay it." "But Sophia never approved this," I said, referring to Sophia Williams, my main contact at Horizon. Harold's expression hardened. "Our agreement allows for additional strategic services as needed. We provided those services. The billing is correct." I wasn't convinced, but I didn't want to push further without more information. The next week, during my regular call with Sophia, I carefully broached the subject. By the way, I wanted to check if the strategic consulting services we added last month have been helpful for your team. There was a pause. What strategic consulting services? We didn't request anything additional. My stomach dropped. It must be a misunderstanding. I'll look into it and get back to you. I never did get back to her about it. Harold made it clear that creating client confusion over standard billing practices would be considered disruptive and unprofessional. This incident bothered me deeply, but it was just the beginning. I started noticing similar discrepancies across several accounts, additional fees services that were billed, but never clearly delivered, hours that seemed inflated. The more I looked, the more concerned I became. Were these deliberate overcharges, or just administrative oversights? And if they were deliberate, who was orchestrating them? Harold seemed the obvious suspect. But could this be happening without approval from higher up? Around this time, I accidentally overheard a conversation between Harold and Brian. I was working late and headed to the supply room near Harold's office when their voices carried through the partially open door. "Emma's getting too interested in the billing details," Harold was saying. "Make sure she's only getting the client-facing statements from now on." "Will do," Brian replied. "She's been asking a lot of questions in the accounting department." "She's naive," Harold said with a laugh. "Thinks everything should be transparent and fair. This business doesn't work that way." I froze, then quietly retreated to my desk. This confirmed my growing suspicion that the discrepancies weren't accidents. They were systemic. My disillusionment grew rapidly after that. The company I had once been so proud to join now felt tainted. The impressive revenue figures, the generous executive bonuses, how much of it came from systematically overcharging clients who trusted us? The next blow came during the quarterly review meeting. I had prepared a detailed presentation on my portfolio's performance, including strategies that had worked and suggestions for improvement. Harold cut my presentation time in half. "We need to prioritize bigger accounts," he announced. "Emma, you'll have 5 minutes instead of 10. During those 5 rushed minutes, I could see most of the executives checking their phones or whispering to each other. Only Jessica, the CFO, seemed to be paying attention. Her eyes narrowed slightly as I mentioned the growth percentages for my accounts. Afterward in the hallway, I overheard Harold talking to Richard Walker. "Emma's accounts are stable but not showing the growth potential we need. I'm considering redistributing some of her major clients to give them more strategic attention." I felt like I'd been punched. My accounts were showing above-average growth. The numbers proved it. But Harold was creating a different narrative, and as a VP, his word carried more weight than mine. That evening, I confided in Alicia, over drinks at a bar far enough from the office to ensure privacy. "I think there's something seriously wrong with our billing practices," I told her, keeping my voice low despite the noisy environment. "And Harold seems to be actively hiding it from clients and some of the staff." Alicia looked uncomfortable. "Be careful, Emma. People who ask too many questions about the financial side don't tend to last long here." "Have you noticed anything similar with your accounts?" I pressed. She hesitated before answering. "Let's just say I've learned which questions not to ask. This is still the best paying job either of us has had. Sometimes it's better to focus on your work and let the executives handle the rest." Her response troubled me, suggesting this might be a wider problem than just Harold's accounts division. Was the entire company culture built on deception? The isolation grew worse. Harold began excluding me from client meetings I had previously led. My access to certain financial reports was mysteriously revoked. System updates was the explanation from IT. Sophia from Horizon Healthcare called me directly one afternoon, bypassing our scheduled meeting time. "Emma, I've been reviewing our payments to Walker for the past year. There are consistent charges we can't reconcile with the services we've received. Can you explain this?" My heart raced. "I'd be happy to look into that, Sophia. Could you email me the specific charges you're questioning?" I already sent them to you and Harold 2 days ago, she replied, confusion in her voice. I never received that email. When I checked with Brian about it, he said Harold's handling that communication directly. He asked that you focus on the new campaign rollout instead. I was being systematically cut out of financial discussions with my own clients. The message was clear: don't ask questions about money. But the questions kept multiplying in my mind. How extensive was this problem? How long had it been happening? And what would happen to me if I kept pushing for answers? I began keeping a separate private record of everything I noticed. A notebook that never left my possession, stored in my apartment, not the office. Each discrepancy, each overcharge, each instance where services billed didn't match services delivered, I documented it all with dates, amounts, and affected clients. The pattern was becoming clear. Most clients were being charged 10 to 15% more than they should have been, through various added fees, extended hours, and services that were vaguely described but never clearly delivered. On paper, everything could be explained away as strategic consulting or additional resource allocation. But the reality was simpler, systematic, overcharging. After 3 weeks of documentation, I decided to confront Harold again, this time with specific examples. I requested a private meeting and came prepared with 3 clear instances from different clients. These are serious allegations, Emma Harold said. After I presented my findings, his voice dangerously quiet. You're essentially accusing the company of fraud. I'm not making accusations, I replied carefully. I'm bringing discrepancies to your attention that affect our client relationships and potentially our reputation. Harold leaned forward, all pretense of professional courtesy gone. Let me be very clear. Our billing practices are approved at the highest levels of this company. Questioning them is not only inappropriate, it suggests you may not be a good fit for Walker's culture. The threat was unmistakable. Is that why my access to the financial reporting system was restricted? I asked. Your access was adjusted to match your responsibilities, he replied smoothly. Nothing more. I left the meeting shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. Harold had all but confirmed my suspicions while simultaneously threatening my job. The next day, my workload mysteriously increased. 3 new minor clients were added to my portfolio with impossible deadlines. My emails to other departments suddenly took days to receive responses. I was being isolated and overwhelmed. Classic tactics to push someone to quit or fail. During this time, I noticed something else. The company was calculating bonuses based on the inflated billing figures. This meant that executives like Harold weren't just overcharging clients, they were directly profiting from the practice through their bonus structures. The more they inflated the bills, the bigger their bonuses grew. I needed allies, but finding them proved difficult. I carefully approached someone in human resources, framing my concerns as a process issue rather than an accusation of wrongdoing. I'm having trouble reconciling some client billing information, I explained to Deborah in HR. Is there someone who could help me understand the approval process for additional service fees? Deborah smiled professionally. All billing questions should go through your department head. That's company policy. Even if my concerns involve my department head. Her smile faltered slightly. Especially then. The chain of command is important at Walker, Emma. Harold has been with the company for 20 years. He understands our processes better than anyone. It was a dead end. HR wasn't going to help me challenge a long-standing executive. Then came the moment that crystallized everything. I was working late, walking back from the break room, when I heard Harold on a conference call in his office. The door was partially open, and he clearly thought the floor was empty. No, I don't think Emma should be included in the leadership development program, he was saying. Between us, she's too focused on details and client hand-holding. She's not cut out for leadership. I stood frozen, the words hitting me like physical blows. After nearly 3 years of dedication of building client relationships worth millions of generating ideas that Harold routinely took credit for, this was how he spoke about me when he thought I couldn't hear. We need people who understand the bigger picture, Harold continued. people who know when to prioritize company interests. The implication was clear: people who wouldn't question unethical billing practices, people who would look the other way. I walked quietly back to my desk, a strange calm replacing my initial hurt. Something had shifted inside me. The company I had once been so proud to join now seemed corrupt at its core, and my future there looked increasingly untenable. The next day, the annual bonus announcements were made. Harold received $890,000, an extraordinary amount even by Walker's generous standards. The company-wide email congratulated him on exceptional division performance and record client billing. Looking at that number, knowing what I now knew about how it had been achieved, something hardened in me. This wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. Clients who trusted us were being systematically deceived. My own work was being used as cover for financial manipulation. I decided to dig deeper, using every access point I still had. Working after hours and carefully documenting everything I discovered the full extent of the scheme. Over 20 major clients were being significantly overcharged with the extra funds, millions of dollars annually, flowing directly into the company's profit statements and executive bonus pools. The stress began affecting every aspect of my life. I wasn't sleeping. Friends commented that I seemed distracted and anxious. I canceled social plans to spend evenings poring over reports and records, building my case. I knew I needed to alert someone with authority, and Jessica, the CFO, seemed like my best hope. She had always struck me as rigidly ethical, and if anyone would care about financial impropriety, surely it would be her. I drafted a careful email requesting a confidential meeting regarding client billing concerns, being deliberately vague while suggesting urgency. The next morning, I was called into Harold's office. On his screen was my email to Jessica. "Attempting to go around your direct supervisor to the executive team?" he asked, his voice cold. "That's grounds for immediate termination, Emma." My heart sank. Apparently, all communications to the C-suite were monitored or forwarded to department heads. "I thought financial concerns should be addressed to the CFO," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your concerns, as I've already explained, are misplaced. Consider this a final warning. Focus on your assigned tasks and leave financial oversight to those responsible for it." I nodded and left, but my mind was racing. Harold had effectively cut off my last internal avenue for addressing the fraud. Whatever action I took now would have to be more direct and would likely end my career at Walker and Associates. That night, I barely slept as I weighed my options and what I stood to lose. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The retaliation began immediately and obviously. Harold reassigned two of my largest, most successful clients to Brian with no explanation. My new assignments were all troubled accounts with unrealistic recovery targets. My invitation to the annual Client Appreciation Gala, an event I had helped plan, was rescinded due to limited space. "He's trying to make you quit," Alicia warned me during a hurried conversation in the stairwell, one of the few places we could speak without being overheard. "If you leave voluntarily, they don't have to pay severance, and there's less risk of you making trouble." "I know," I replied, "but I'm not giving him the satisfaction." Instead, I became methodical about gathering evidence. Since my access to the main financial system had been restricted, I had to be creative. I still had all my client contracts with their original scope of work. I had emails discussing projects and deliverables, and most importantly, I had relationships with the clients themselves. Under the guise of relationship management check-ins, I carefully asked questions that gave me insight into what they were being billed versus what they had agreed to. I never directly suggested impropriety. That would have been unprofessional and could have backfired badly. Instead, I asked about their satisfaction with various aspects of our service, whether they felt they were getting good value, and if they had any concerns about any aspect of our work together. The picture that emerged was consistent and damning. Nearly every major client had concerns about billing, but had been placated by Harold or other executives when they raised questions. Many stayed despite these concerns because of their relationship with account managers like me, relationships built on trust that the company was exploiting. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Thomas Green at FinTech Partners, one of our most valuable clients. Emma, we need to talk. He began, his voice unusually serious. I've been reviewing our payments to Walker for the past 2 years, and I'm finding charges that no one can explain to me. Your colleague Brian tried, but his explanations don't match our agreement. My stomach tightened. I'm sorry to hear that, Thomas. Can you tell me more about what you're seeing? What followed was a detailed description of exactly the pattern I had been documenting. Vague charges, services never clearly delivered, hours that seemed inflated. Fintech was being overcharged by nearly $300,000 annually. We value our relationship with you, Emma Thomas concluded, but I'm taking this to my CEO tomorrow. Unless we get satisfactory answers, we'll have to terminate our contract. I spent 2 hours on the phone with him, reviewing the issues and promising to personally get answers. I didn't defend the indefensible, but I bought time by emphasizing how much I valued their business and promising to investigate each charge thoroughly. After the call, I sat at my desk, heart pounding. Fintech represented over $2 million in annual billing. Their departure would create waves that even Harold couldn't smooth over. I immediately drafted a detailed email to Harold, Jessica, and Richard Walker himself, outlining Fintech's concerns and the risk of losing them. I was breaking protocol by including the executives, but I could justify it by the financial risk to the company. Harold appeared at my desk within minutes of my sending the email, his face flushed with anger. My office, now, he hissed. Once inside with the door closed, he exploded. You've overstepped every boundary. This could have been handled discreetly, but you've created a paper trail directly to the executive team. Fintech is threatening to leave, I replied evenly. That's a $2 million account. I thought Richard and Jessica should be aware of the risk. I'll handle Fintech, he snapped. Your access to their account is revoked effective immediately. I want a full handover by end of day. That evening, Brian approached me as I was gathering my things to leave. To my surprise, he looked troubled rather than triumphant. Can we talk? Not here, he said quietly. We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. Brian fidgeted with his cup for several minutes before speaking. I know what's happening with the billing, he finally said. I've known for a while. Why are you telling me this now? He looked up, and I was surprised to see genuine distress in his expression. Because Harold just told me to smooth things over with Fintech by offering them a 20% discount while keeping all the same charges in place under different names. He said, and I quote, "Just bury it deeper in the contract language." And that bothers you. I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. I've been justifying it to myself, Brian admitted. Telling myself it's just aggressive business, that all agencies do it to some degree. But what Harold's asking now, it's explicit fraud. And I'm supposed to be the one doing it. Why not refuse? You know why? My career would be over. Just like yours will be if you keep pushing. He wasn't wrong. I had few illusions about my future at Walker at this point. But something had changed in me over these past weeks. The fear of losing my job had been replaced by something stronger, anger at the injustice and determination to expose it. The breaking point came the following week during the monthly accounts review meeting. Harold presented a glowing overview of division performance, highlighting exceptional client retention and satisfaction. When it came time for account managers to present, he interrupted my presentation after just 2 minutes. I think we've got the picture, Emma. Let's move on to more significant accounts. In that moment, in front of the entire team and several executives, Harold's message couldn't have been clearer. You don't matter, and neither does the truth. That evening, I made my decision. I would leave Walker and Associates, but not quietly, and not without ensuring the truth came to light. I spent the weekend compiling my evidence into a clear, comprehensive document. No emotional language, no accusations, just facts, figures, and documentation showing the systematic pattern of client overcharging and how it connected to executive bonuses. The client list I created was meticulous. Company names, contract values, actual services delivered, amounts billed, and the discrepancies between them. For the largest clients, I calculated the total overcharges for the past 2 years. The final figure was staggering, over $7 million in fraudulent billing. I knew this document could potentially expose me to legal risk if I handled it incorrectly. I wasn't a lawyer, but I understood enough to know that I needed to be extremely careful about how I used this information. My goal wasn't to harm the company or extract revenge. It was to stop an unethical practice that was harming clients who trusted us. The night before I planned to act, I barely slept. I reviewed my resignation letter one last time. Professional, concise, with no mention of the fraud. The evidence would speak for itself. I thought about my career, the years of hard work that had led me to Walker, and what might come after. I had no job lined up, no safety net beyond my modest savings. But as I finally drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Whatever happened next, I would face it with integrity intact. Monday morning arrived with a strange sense of clarity. I dressed with particular care, my best suit, subtle makeup, hair, perfectly styled. If this was to be my last day at Walker & Associates, I would leave looking every inch the professional they had failed to value. The office hummed with the usual Monday energy: weekend stories, coffee runs, preparation for the week ahead. No one noticed anything different about me as I smiled and greeted colleagues. Inside, though, I felt removed from it all, as if watching a scene I was no longer truly part of. At my desk, I finalized my resignation letter. It was brief and professional. Dear Harold and management team, please accept this letter as formal notification that I am resigning from my position as Senior Account Manager with Walker & Associates, effective 2 weeks from today. Thank you for the opportunities for professional and personal development that you have provided during the last 3 years. I have appreciated working for the company and value the support provided to me during my tenure. If I can be of any assistance during this transition, please let me know. Sincerely, Emma Sullivan. No mention of my reasons, no hint of what I knew, just a standard resignation that couldn't be used against me later. The client list document was different, titled simply Walker & Associates Client Billing Analysis. It contained everything I had discovered: client names, contract terms, actual deliverables, billed amounts, and the discrepancies between them. I included screenshots of relevant emails and reports. The final page showed the correlation between inflated billing figures and executive bonus calculations, with Harold's recent $890,000 bonus highlighted. I printed both documents rather than sending them electronically. No digital trail that could be deleted or denied. Timing was crucial. Every Monday, Harold had lunch with Richard Walker at an exclusive restaurant downtown. They typically left at 11:45 and returned around 1:30. The executive floor was usually quieter during this time. At 11:40, I watched Harold leave his office, briefcase in hand, heading toward the executive elevator. I waited 15 minutes to ensure he was gone, then calmly walked to his office. His assistant was away from her desk, the lunch hour bathroom break I had counted on. Inside his office, I placed both documents centered perfectly on his desk, the resignation letter on top, the client billing analysis beneath it. Then I left, quietly closing the door behind me. Back at my desk, I began the process of organizing my files and personal belongings. I wasn't planning to leave immediately. That would look suspicious. Instead, I would work normally until Harold returned and the inevitable confrontation occurred. Alicia stopped by around 12:30. "Lunch?" she asked. "I have some things to finish first," I replied. "Rain check." She looked at me curiously. "Everything okay? You seem different today." "Just focused," I said, with a smile that felt strange on my face. "Big presentation coming up." That wasn't exactly a lie. In a way, this would be the most important presentation of my career, just not the kind she was thinking of. At 1:25, I saw Harold return through the main entrance. He nodded to several people, exchanged brief words with Brian, and headed toward his office. I took a deep breath and continued working my screen, showing a client report I wasn't actually reading. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I began to wonder if he had somehow missed the documents. Then, his assistant appeared at my desk. Emma Harold would like to see you in his office. I nodded, stood up, smoothed my skirt, and followed her. My heart was racing, but my exterior remained calm. Harold was standing behind his desk when I entered. My documents were spread out before him. "Close the door," he said, his voice unnaturally controlled. I did so, and turned to face him. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" he asked. "Resigning," I replied simply. "As the letter states." "And this?" He held up the client billing analysis. "What is this supposed to be?" Information I felt should be brought to the company's attention. Harold's laugh was short and dismissive. "This is your idea of professional behavior. Gathering confidential information and making wild accusations on your way out the door." "There are no accusations in that document," I said evenly. "Just data. Verifiable facts about client billing." "Facts you had no authority to compile," he countered. "This could be construed as corporate espionage, Emma. Have you considered the legal implications of your actions?" I had extensively, but I wasn't going to admit that. I've only documented discrepancies that affected my own clients and the company's financial reporting. Harold's expression shifted to something almost pitying. "I expected better from you. A resignation I can accept. Clearly you're not a good fit for the culture here. But this attempt to cause damage on your way out, it's beneath you. And frankly, it could have serious consequences for your future." The threat was clear, but before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. It opened without waiting for an answer. Jessica Winters, the CFO, walked in. Her expression was unreadable, as always. "Harold, I need to discuss the quarterly projections," she began, then stopped noticing me. "I'm sorry to interrupt." "Not at all," Harold said, quickly gathering the papers on his desk. "Emma was just leaving. She's decided to resign." Jessica's eyes flickered to the papers in Harold's hands. "Is that her resignation letter?" "Yes, along with some other materials. Nothing important." Jessica stepped further into the room. "May I see?" Harold hesitated visibly. "It's just exit paperwork. HR matters." "As CFO, all personnel changes at the senior account manager level require my review," Jessica said, extending her hand, "especially in the middle of a fiscal quarter." Reluctantly, Harold handed her my resignation letter. Jessica read it quickly, nodded, then noticed the edge of my other document peeking out from beneath Harold's calendar. "What's this?" she asked, reaching for it before Harold could stop her. "Just some account notes Emma was working on," Harold said quickly. "Nothing relevant to finances." But Jessica had already pulled out the client billing analysis. The room fell silent as she began to read, her expression changing from professional interest to confusion to something much harder. She flipped through several pages, occasionally glancing up at Harold, whose face had gone pale. When she reached the final page showing the bonus calculations, she stopped. Her eyes moved from the highlighted figure of Harold's bonus to the list of inflated client billings, making the connection I had carefully laid out. Then she looked directly at me. "How long have you been aware of these discrepancies, Emma?" "I began noticing them about 6 months ago," I answered truthfully. "But I only understood the full pattern recently." Jessica nodded slowly, then turned to Harold. "Is this accurate?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Harold's demeanor changed instantly. "Of course not. This is a disgruntled employee trying to cause problems. These numbers are taken out of context, manipulated to—" "The bonus report," Jessica interrupted. "Is this figure accurate? Did you receive $890,000 in bonus last quarter?" Harold fell silent for a moment. "Yes, but that's based on division performance metrics that—" Jessica cut him off again, picking up my office phone and dialing an extension. "Richard, Jessica, I need you in Harold's office immediately. And get our lawyers on the phone. Now." She hung up and turned to me. "Emma, please wait outside. Don't leave the building." As I stepped out, I heard Harold's voice rising behind me. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly believe." The door closed, cutting off his protests. I sat in the chair outside his office, hands folded in my lap waiting. Around me, the office continued its normal Monday afternoon rhythm, oblivious to the storm breaking in Harold's corner office. 15 minutes later, Richard Walker himself hurried past me without a glance, entering Harold's office and closing the door firmly behind him. The raised voices that followed were muffled but clearly heated. I waited, surprisingly calm considering the circumstances. Whatever happened next, I had done what needed to be done. 20 minutes after Richard entered Harold's office, Jessica emerged and approached me. "Emma, come with me, please." She led me to a small conference room on the executive floor, one I'd never been in before. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to face me. "I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation," she began. "What you've compiled suggests significant financial impropriety." "I'm aware," I replied quietly. "Why didn't you come to me directly with this information?" she asked. "I tried to schedule a meeting with you last month. Harold intercepted the email and warned me against going outside the chain of command." Jessica's expression tightened. "I see. And you're prepared to stand behind everything in this document. This could potentially involve external auditors, possibly even legal authorities." "Every figure is backed by documentation," I confirmed. "I can provide the original sources for any item you question." She studied me for a long moment. "Your resignation. Do you still wish to leave Walker and Associates?" The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on exposing the fraud that I hadn't considered what might come after. "I don't believe I can continue working under the current circumstances," I said carefully. "Under Harold, you mean?" It wasn't a question. "Yes." Jessica nodded as if confirming something to herself. "I understand. For now, I'd like you to take the rest of the day off with pay. Don't discuss this with anyone. Not colleagues, not clients, not friends. We'll be in touch tomorrow about next steps." As I gathered my things at my desk, my phone began buzzing with text messages. The news was already spreading. From Alicia. "What is happening? Harold just got escorted to the conference room by Richard and some guy I don't recognize." From Brian. "Did you really quit? Everyone's talking about some big blow-up in Harold's office." I ignored them all, slipping my phone into my bag and walking calmly to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Brian watching me from across the lobby, his expression a mixture of confusion and something that might have been respect. At home, I poured myself a glass of wine and finally allowed the tension of the day to release. My hands shook slightly as the adrenaline ebbed. I had done it, taken the biggest professional risk of my life with no guarantee of the outcome. My phone continued to buzz throughout the evening. I ignored most messages, but took a call from an unknown number around 7:30. "Emma Sullivan," a male voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "This is Alan Mercer, General Counsel for Walker and Associates. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow morning to discuss the documentation you provided. Would 9 a.m. at our downtown legal office work for you?" The company's lawyer wanted to meet off-site. This was getting serious fast. "Yes, that's fine," I replied. "Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself and any original documentation you referenced in your report. I assure you this is not an adversarial meeting. We're simply establishing facts." The next morning I arrived at the address provided, a prestigious law firm in the financial district. I was shown to a conference room where Jessica Allen Mercer and another lawyer I didn't recognize were waiting. "Thank you for coming," Emma Jessica began. "This is Alan, our general counsel, and Patricia Donovan, an independent attorney specializing in corporate finance." An independent attorney. Walker wasn't just handling this internally. For the next 3 hours, I walked them through every detail of my findings. They asked pointed, specific questions about each client, each discrepancy, how I had discovered the pattern, and what communications I had with Harold about it. "Harold was terminated yesterday afternoon," Jessica informed me toward the end of the meeting. "We're conducting a comprehensive audit of all client billing under his supervision." "And Brian?" I asked. "Currently on administrative leave pending investigation," Alan replied. "His level of involvement isn't clear yet." As the meeting concluded, Patricia handed me her business card. If you have any concerns about your position or treatment by the company during this process, please contact me directly, she said. Walker and Associates has retained me specifically to ensure this matter is handled appropriately and that individuals who brought it to light are protected. Outside the building, as I was considering whether to take a taxi home, my phone rang. Harold's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "You have no idea what you've done," he said, without preamble, his voice tight with suppressed rage. 20 years building a career destroyed because you couldn't mind your own business. Fraudulent billing was my business, Harold, I replied, keeping my voice steady. It involved my clients, my work. This isn't over, he continued. When this all comes out, they'll need someone to blame. You think they'll protect you? The executives approved these practices. They just need a scapegoat now. Is that why you're calling? To threaten me? To warn you, he replied. We're both expendable to them. The difference is I know it. The call ended abruptly. I stood on the sidewalk, pedestrians flowing around me considering his words. Was he right? Was I being naive about the company's intentions? That evening, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize asking to meet at a cafe the following morning. It was signed simply Jessica. I debated whether to go. Was this a trap of some kind? But curiosity won out. The cafe was busy with morning commuters when I arrived. Jessica sat in a corner booth dressed more casually than I had ever seen her at the office. Thank you for coming, she said as I joined her. I wanted to speak with you away from company property and lawyers. Is something wrong? That depends on your perspective, she replied. The internal audit has already confirmed your findings across the accounts division. But the problem goes deeper than Harold. Several other executives were aware of, or actively participated in the billing scheme. Including Richard, he asked. Jessica hesitated. I can't comment specifically, but the board is now involved. This will likely result in significant leadership changes. Harold called me yesterday, I told her. He suggested the company would look for a scapegoat. He's wrong, Jessica said firmly. The board has authorized me to offer you a settlement agreement in exchange for your assistance with the audit and any subsequent investigations. A settlement. But I'm the one who reported the fraud. Exactly. This isn't hush money, Emma. It's recognition of the professional risk you took and compensation for any career disruption. We'd also provide excellent references and release you from any non-compete clauses if you wish to continue in this industry. The offer was generous. 6 months' salary plus bonus healthcare coverage for a year, and a clean break with no restrictions on my future employment. I signed the papers the following day. News of the scandal at Walker and Associates broke 2 weeks later. The press release was carefully worded, citing irregularities in client billing practices and leadership changes to ensure alignment with the company's ethical standards. Harold wasn't mentioned by name, but industry insiders quickly pieced together what had happened. Brian contacted me about a month after everything happened. We met for coffee, and he seemed genuinely changed by the experience. I wanted to apologize, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I knew what was happening was wrong, but I convinced myself it was just how business worked. Watching you stake your entire career on doing the right thing, it made me realize how far I'd drifted from my own values. What will you do now? I asked. Starting over at a smaller agency. Entry-level again, but somewhere with actual ethics. What about you? I had received several job offers after word got around about what had happened at Walker. Surprisingly, many clients respected the stance I had taken, even though it had caused short-term disruption. I'm taking some time to figure out what I really want, I told him. This experience has changed my perspective on a lot of things. The legal aftermath continued for months. I provided statements to auditors and occasionally to the legal team, handling the company's internal investigation. I learned that Harold was facing potential criminal charges for his role in the fraud, along with civil suits from several major clients. The emotional impact of the whole ordeal hit me in waves. Some days I felt proud and vindicated. Other days I questioned whether I had done the right thing. whether the cost to my career and reputation had been worth it. The stress and uncertainty of those months at Walker had taken a toll that I was only beginning to process. But gradually, as weeks turned to months, I began to heal. The settlement provided financial stability, while I considered my next steps. Former clients reached out with words of support, and in some cases offers to follow me wherever I landed next. Most surprisingly, Jessica contacted me again about 6 months after I'd left Walker. The company had undergone a complete leadership overhaul with her as the new CEO. "We're rebuilding from the ground up," she told me. "New policies, new culture, new leadership team. If you're ever interested in coming back, there would be a place for you." I thanked her, but declined. Some chapters once closed should stay that way. The 6 months following my departure from Walker and Associates became a period of unexpected personal growth. With financial security from the settlement, I had something I'd never experienced in my professional lifetime to reflect without pressure. At first, I filled my days with practical tasks, updating my resume, networking with industry contacts, researching potential employers. But gradually, I allowed myself to step back and consider larger questions. What kind of career did I truly want? What values were non-negotiable for me in a workplace? What had this experience taught me about myself? I began keeping a journal, something I hadn't done since college. Writing helped me process the complicated emotions: pride in standing up for what was right, lingering anger at Harold, and the system that enabled him; uncertainty about my professional identity, now that the career path I had envisioned was gone. Job offers began coming in almost immediately after the news about Walker broke. My inbox filled with messages from recruiters and executives who had heard through the grapevine about my role in exposing the fraud. "We need people with your integrity," one CEO wrote, "and frankly, your courage." I approached these opportunities, cautiously asking detailed questions about company culture, ethical practices, and leadership styles during interviews. Some found my directness off-putting. Those were the offers I declined without regret. 3 months after leaving Walker, I accepted a position with Riverstone Creative, a mid-sized agency known for its ethical leadership and transparent client relationships. They offered me a senior position with a salary comparable to what I'd made at Walker, but in an environment where I could rebuild my confidence and trust in the industry. "We don't want you," despite what happened at Walker, Miranda Riverstone's founder told me during our final interview. "We want you because of it." That kind of ethical backbone can't be taught. Starting at Riverstone felt like breathing fresh air after years in a stuffy room. The culture shock was real. Collaborative meetings where ideas were attributed to their actual creators, billing practices that were explained clearly to clients, leaders who publicly recognized team contributions. Several of my former clients from Walker reached out once they heard about my new position. Sophia from Horizon Healthcare was the first. "Emma, we've missed working with you," she said during our call. "Horizon's contract with Walker is up for renewal next month. We'd like to discuss bringing our business to Riverstone instead." Over the next year, 4 major clients followed Sophia's lead, citing their trust in me as a primary factor in their decision. It was deeply validating. Proof that the relationships I had built on honesty and service had real lasting value. The legal aftermath of the Walker scandal continued to unfold. I wasn't directly involved in most of it, but Jessica kept me informed of major developments. Harold had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and was facing both criminal prosecution and civil lawsuits from clients. Several other executives, including Richard Walker himself, had agreed to settlements that included financial penalties and restrictions on future leadership positions in publicly traded companies. I wasn't called to testify in court. The documentation I had provided was comprehensive enough to stand on its own, but I did give several depositions to lawyers representing former clients in their suits against Walker. Brian reached out periodically. He had landed at a small agency and was rebuilding his career from a more ethical foundation. "I still think about how differently things could have gone if I had your courage earlier," he told me during a lunch meetup. "I was so focused on climbing the ladder that I stopped questioning what the ladder was leaning against." About a year after leaving Walker, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Alicia. We hadn't spoken since my departure. Her silence during the scandal had felt like abandonment at the time, though I later recognized it as self-preservation. "I should have backed you up," she admitted, as we sat across from each other at a restaurant far from both our offices. "I knew what was happening was wrong, but I was afraid of losing everything I'd worked for." "I understand," I told her, and I did. Not everyone can afford to take the kinds of risks I had taken. "What's happening at Walker now?" "Everything's different," she said. "Jessica has completely transformed the culture. There are new compliance processes, ethical guidelines, with actual teeth, regular audits of client billing by independent firms. People actually talk about integrity in meetings now, and it's not just corporate speak." "Do you think it will last?" I asked. Alicia nodded. "I think the company nearly died from this. Everyone who's still there understands that trust is the only thing keeping them in business. Jessica reminds us of that constantly." Hearing about Walker's transformation was satisfying, even if I wasn't there to witness it. The system I had fought against was changing, not just at Walker but across the industry, as news of the scandal prompted other agencies to examine their own practices. As my second year at Riverstone began, I was promoted to Vice President of Client Services, a leadership position I might have never attained under Harold's regime at Walker. The irony of his words, "She's not cut out for leadership," wasn't lost on me as I built my own team based on principles of transparency, collaboration, and ethical client service. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. There were still nights when I woke up with anxiety questioning my decisions or reliving the confrontation in Harold's office. But those moments became less frequent as I built a new professional identity grounded in values I truly believed in. The most profound change wasn't in my title or salary but in how I defined success. Before Walker, I had measured my worth by external metrics: prestigious employers, important clients, bonus amounts. Now I understood that true success came from alignment between my work and my values, from building relationships based on trust, and from having the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it comes at a personal cost. Leadership, I realized, isn't about titles or authority. It's about integrity, the willingness to do what's right, even when no one is watching, and especially when everyone is watching you compromise. Harold never understood that kind of leadership, and it was ultimately his downfall. As for me, I don't regret leaving that client list on Harold's desk, even with all the chaos and uncertainty that followed. Some might see what I did as career suicide, but I see it differently. It wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The moment I chose to lead with integrity, rather than follow with compromise. Have you ever faced a moment where standing up for what's right meant risking everything you'd worked for? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if you found value in my experience, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about navigating difficult workplace situations with integrity. Remember, true leadership isn't about position or power. It's about having the courage to do what's right, especially when it's difficult. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to trust your moral compass, even when the path it points to seems daunting.